Hello everyone, it's Friday, so time for another Friday Reads. And this week has been quite uneventful, to be honest, as most of them have been in lockdown. But I have finished 4 books, so I thought I will go through them. So the first one I finished is one that I was reading last week, and it's Down and Out in Paris and London by George Orwell. And this was my reread for February. And this is basically about George Orwell when he was young and spent some time in Paris, and then he went back to London. And he lived a very poor life back then. Even though he is not from a very poor family, he wanted to know how it is to live poor, and we see him selling his clothes to be able to eat and things like that, working in a restaurant, that kind of environment. And this is, it's his memoir about that time that he spent there, but it's not only that, it's very reflective. George Orwell's writing is quite reflective and quite thoughtful, and he goes into the details of why people are poor and what capitalism does to that, and how are we valuing people if we are allowing all these poor people to go hungry. Does that mean that they are less than others? That kind of thought, and I enjoyed this a lot. I remember his memoir parts, like the hardships that he has to go through, but I was not as aware from my last reading, like I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, about the capitalism bits. Maybe I didn't get as much out of it because I was younger, but I think I got a lot out of this this time, and I really enjoyed it. And then I read 3 books that are kind of connected. I love when books talk to each other, and these 3 books are mainly about nature. So I did one in ebook and 2 in audiobook. The one that I did in ebook was The Rain Heron by Robbie Arnott, and this one is sort of magical realism. It has a lot of mysticism about this rain heron in this kind of dystopian world, in which the nature is in a really bad place, and humans are trying to survive basically. And so there is this one guy that is trying to chase this mythical creature from an indigenous tribe that is called the rain heron, that is supposed to bring rain and regenerate the land. And we see how greed ends up affecting that tribe and the rain heron itself and the culture. And of course it's a commentary on colonialism and what that did to indigenous people, and also what it did to nature. And I thought it was good. The writing was quite beautiful, but I found the story a little bit disconnected, and I could not relate to many of the characters, and it was just a little bit disconnected basically. So I enjoyed it, but it was not my favorite read of ever. And then the other 2 books that I read in audiobook related to the nature. The first one was Wilding by Isabella, and this is I went into it thinking that it was going to be a memoir of Isabella when her and her husband decided to rewild the farm that they had and just let nature do its thing and not intervene. And although it is about that, it's very scientific. It gives a lot of facts about the rewilding process and the animal species and the kind of things that they have to do for that process to happen, and all the science behind all those experiments and what it backs up. And I quite like this one. I found the concept really interesting. I learned a lot from it. I didn't know that the Netherlands apparently it's quite into the rewilding thing. However, there was a couple of chapters at the end talking about the way they are funding these projects and the different ways that they have to fund these projects, and some of those things made me a little bit uncomfortable, to be honest. And also the things that they do so that they can fit within the um, the UK regulations. And yeah, so those things, I understand why they did what they did, what they're coming from, and exactly like how these things happen. But it still made me a little bit uncomfortable to know that this is one of the ways how they are funding these projects. So yeah, it was a pity at the end that hamper my enjoyment of the book a little bit. The last one I read for the nature topic was Braiding Sweetgrass by Walt Kimmerer, I hope. And I absolutely love this one. So the author is a botanist and a Native American, and she talks a lot about how she was taught to interact with nature and what her science has taught her and what her tribe has taught her about nature, and how the two of them come together to um, to have this holistic approach to how we treat nature and how we live in the planet. It had a lot of discussion about capitalism and why that is basically killing the earth, but also why it's creating poverty, and why it is making an unjust system that doesn't make anything better. And she was sort of proposing a different approach, and I like that she's a scientist because she can have that very scientific approach and say in which ways science helps her make the most out of nature, but and understand nature better. But at the same time, she's saying that is also not enough. We have to stop treating the earth like a commodity, like a thing, and we have to give it back its soul. So in her native tribe, they have words for like things that we will consider non-living, or things that we will not consider people. So, for example, trees are standing people for her tribe, and for example, she was also saying that things like bay are verbs, not nouns, because it's water that is becoming a bay in a way. And we have to recognize that fluidity and that value that these things have, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to treat them with the respect they deserve and the respect they need. And it's not something like we have to give something up so that they become better. We all become better if we do the best of individually. And maybe it's not the life that we have been taught to want, but it's maybe a more healthy way to live for everybody, because I think many people have a lot of issues with the way we live now. And yeah, I think it was brilliant. I learned a lot. She also talks a lot about being grateful for the things that you get, and not in the material sense, but be thankful for the water that you are able to drink, being thankful for the rain, because that means that we will be able to also eat, be thankful for the plants that give us the fruits that they give, or the vegetables that we are able to eat, and recognize that we are alive because of these things, and therefore we should be grateful for them. It's not something that comes for free, it's something that we have to treat with respect, but it is also something that we can learn to appreciate and learn to be happy with. And I just loved it. It changed my perspective in so many ways. And as I said, I read it as an audiobook, but I really want a copy now and like basically highlight every sentence. Also the way that she explained it was in a beautiful but simple way, and it was just amazing. I love that book, and yeah, I think that everyone should read it, because even though I am not a very spiritual person, I think that all the things that she explained made sense to me, because she is a scientist as well, so she can see how science is. It's not like science or spiritual connection. She argues that both are important and we should develop both so that we are successful. And yeah, I mean, I can gush for forever with this book, but I really, really loved it. Yeah, I'm definitely buying a copy and highlighting every single sentence. But yeah, other than that, I am currently reading 2 books. The first one is Black Wave by Kim Ghattas, and this one is a very dense book about the Middle East, the history of the Middle East, but it is told from someone from the Middle East with a Middle Eastern perspective. So there is no space for the Western perspective on this. It's just what the Middle Easterns think, because many of them are not crazy terrorists that want to blow up the Twin Towers. Obviously, most of them are normal people that are not in agreement with what their governments are doing, and many of them are fighting what they are doing. So this book really highlights how they came to be in the situation they were, and the situation they are. It talks a lot about the fights between the Shias and the Sunnis, and it talks about how these powerful men, like for example in Iran or in Egypt or in Saudi Arabia, how these regimes came to be, and what people there are doing to counteract it, and how difficult it is to live in that way. And I am liking it. I think it's a very important topic and a very important perspective that we don't get very often. However, I am finding it very dense, and I don't think I have the basic knowledge to grasp everything that is saying. And that is on me, that's not in the book. But yeah, I think that if you are starting with this topic and know little to nothing about it, this is going to be a bit difficult to go through, because it is very dense and it is very detailed about all these different regimes and different events in the Middle Eastern world that we in the West don't always hear about. So yeah, that is that. And the other one that I'm currently reading is The Wizard of the Crow by Ngugi, and you're going to be seeing this quite a lot this month, because I'm hosting a read-along for this book in Discord. I will put the link of the announcement and the Discord down below. And we read the first book on this book. It's only like 40 pages. And so far, I mean, I'm liking it. This is probably my favorite book ever, so I'm loving it. But yeah, I know that some people in the Discord have said that they were having a bit of a struggle going through, because the first book doesn't have a lot of plot. It's just setting up the world. But it gets better. I'm just saying. And this is about this fictional war. It's about this fictional sort of magical state in Africa called Abu something, Abu Diria. And the ruler of this country, the first book was about the ruler of the country and how he's supposedly ill, and why people think he's ill, because nobody really knows. And we are introduced to some of his ministers who have very ironic names, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to continue this next week. I think the next section is a lot bigger. It's yeah, it's about 200 pages. But yeah, I will be reading this for sure. And then other things that I'm planning to read next week, I am planning to buddy read Iraq 100 Plus with Logan from Reading with Makar, which I will link down below, of course. And this one is for the Invisible Cities project for Iraq, obviously. And it's a collection of science fiction short stories, I think, which sounds very interesting. It's in script, so that's great because my library is still not open. And also because I find it hard to find things about Iraq that are not about war. They have had so many wars in the last 50 or so years that it is very difficult to find something from Iraq that is relatively recent that is not about war. And this seems to be science fiction. So even though maybe it's about war as well, it's probably not about war in Iraq, which is always nice. And yeah, apart from that, I think I will continue with my booktube prize reading. I still haven't gotten to any of the 2 books I have left, but I'm hoping to do that next week. Also, because next week my husband is not going to be here for a few days. He has to go to Paris to do some paperwork in the embassy. So yeah, I'll probably have a lot more time. So yeah, that was all for today. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you have read any of these books, if you have thoughts on any of them. Let me know especially if you have read Braiding Sweetgrass and what you thought about it, because I need to talk about that book with someone. I already talked to my husband about it and maybe convince him to read it because yeah, I need him to understand. But yeah, let me know, and until next video, bye!